Hey YouTube, what's up? It's Burger Bob, / Shade, whatever you want to call me. Today, my third and final video of the day. I had a lot of stuff on my mind last night when I was coming up with these. I want to talk about balance. And I'm not talking about, standing on one foot or standing on the other foot, or even how a horn balances. Is it front heavy? Is it back heavy? Those things are important. You should be able to stand up, and I think horns should be back heavy, which this is not. I'm talking about how everything in an instrument relates to how the instrument plays and sounds. And that sounds like it's kind of a dumb statement, right? Of course, anything you change about an instrument is going to change how it plays. And I think that's that's what I'm talking about today. So I kind of have this theory, and it's definitely just a theory. It's not like proven by science or anything, that each horn that's well designed is designed kind of around a resistance point, or maybe several resistance points. For instance, this is a Con 60H single valve tuning and slide bass. I've talked about this. I haven't done my full review of this yet. Kind of just done I just got this video and I've been playing it, but I haven't been playing it enough to really tell you guys about it. The resistance point on a Con bass trombone like this, I think, is the valve. This is where the resistance comes from. And I'm not talking about resistance in a bad way. Sometimes it is in a bad way. Sometimes a horn is stuffy and it's not good to play. Typically that's because they're not made well, or they're out of repair. Not because they're just a bad design in the first place. There are bad designs out there, I think. The original Schilke ST20, I think, the large bore tenor, the first generation, not very good. I think that was designed maybe with no resistance points, or they're in the wrong places. I don't know. And of course, keep in mind, I'm coming at this as an amateur horn aficionado. Like I don't have any training or anything. This is just what I've kind of seen and figured out from playing and reading and having a whole bunch of different instruments. So on Con basses, the lead pipe, which is gone now, is not super tight, not super open. I'd say it's a little, it's kind of like on the medium tight side. Tight not meaning a bad thing, just tight meaning smaller than like a large Shire's pipe or something. So there's 1 point of resistance is right here. It's not super resistant though. The slide is all just single bore, whatever, nothing crazy. Nice nickel bass crook. And then the valve is not super big, so I think this is the main resistance point. And that's why a lot of people, when they talk about the character of like a Con bass trombone, if you change the valves, you kind of ruin the character. And I can see kind of why that would be, because the resistance point might be this. I've also changed one of the resistance points by changing out this lead pipe. When I played this just now, I played the first half of that on my George Roberts replica 1.5G-ish mouthpiece, and I played the second half on my Greg Black 1G. Very different sized mouthpieces, obviously. The George Roberts is much, much smaller than my Greg Black. And you can kind of hear how changing the resistance point of the mouthpiece, because the George Roberts is so much smaller, changes how the horn plays, it changes how I play, it changes the sound pretty dramatically. There's probably a little more core to the sound, but not as much to the sides of the sound. It doesn't resonate quite the same way. The mouthpiece definitely makes a difference in the resistance point. And personally, I prefer a larger mouthpiece with less resistance, because I let my chops be part of the resistance point or something else in the instrument. Let's go over a couple more examples. So the Bach 42, as designed, 42B, the resistance point in the Bach is at the lead pipe. This is the stock 42 slide I have. The 42 lead pipe is not super open. It's not super tight, but it's not super open. This is the stock lead pipe. And then there's also a resistance point at the valve. Kind of similar to the con bass, right? The lead pipe is not super open. The valve is definitely not super open. And when you combine these things together, because the rest of the 42 is very open, the slide is standard 547, and the crook is a bass crook, and the throat of the bell is rather large for a tenor, all that kind of stuff. You get a pretty open instrument. Especially when the mouthpiece isn't freezing. I just talked about in my 42 BG video about how this 42 BG has a bad low range. And that entirely not becomes, the lead pipe in the slide that goes with the 42 BG, which is this one, is a Shire's 3G, much, 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 much larger than a 42 lead pipe. So what does that do exactly? You guys are kind of going, okay, you just played a really bad pedal A flat. Why are we even listening to you? What I realized is when I swap these slides around, is when I put the standard Bach slide on this bell section with a small rotor, and it doesn't play super well, especially in the low range with my larger mouthpiece. When I play with a standard slide, all of a sudden the low range is really good. And you're going, well, wait, the lead pipe in this other slide that came with it is really big. Shouldn't the big lead pipe make the low range better? I think what happens is, when you put this in, I have a large mouthpiece, large lead pipe. The crook I don't think matters a whole lot here. And then we get to the valve, which is small. And now the valve is like the only resistance point, and that just kind of backs up and just doesn't let you play a low very easily. So all of a sudden I move the resistance point all the way through the instrument to just the valve, and it just doesn't work anymore. The synergy of the entire instrument has been kind of destroyed by this combination of this mouthpiece and this lead pipe. But when you put the large mouthpiece with the stock lead pipe and the stock slide and everything, all of a sudden it works again. Kind of weird, right? It's that synergy. It has to be right. And that's why when I put this 42T bell section with my new slide, or I guess my slide with the large lead pipe and stuff, it kind of works, it kind of doesn't, because it's really open here and it's really open at the valve. And also it's a narrow slide, so it just really doesn't work. That one does not work as well. But it's really all about finding that synergy. If you look at straight horns, here's my 6H for reference. The lead pipe, this horn is only a 500, so it's not very large. The resistance point is basically just like the whole thing. The slide is just not very big. The crook is sized right for this. It's nickel, I think. Yeah, it's nickel on this. The gooseneck doesn't have to be open. It doesn't have to be huge. And it just kind of all works together. It's a straight horn. There's nothing crazy about it. The problem is when you get to, I think, straight 547s, like the Con 8H. The Con 8H is the straight version, and it looks remarkably similar to this, of the Con 88H. You don't hear about the 8H very often, I think, because it's not a super great instrument. The 80H lead pipe is very open, because the Con 88H, they designed the resistance point kind of at the valve and then like the bell-ish. Those are a little bit smaller. The valve is actually pretty open, but the bell is a little bit smaller than the 42. The entire instrument is just a little bit, just a different design. And when you put that slide with a rather open lead pipe, on a straight bell section, all of a sudden there's kind of no resistance point. And the whole thing is just too open and it's just really hard to play. So there are some very famous people who have played 8Hs, I think. Dennis Wick played one for a while maybe. And there's maybe some soloists that have played them every once in a while. But you really don't hear about the 8H nearly as often as the 88H. And I think that's because Emery Remington, who was the teacher of trombone at Eastman School of Music, he had not very many options of instruments when he was teaching. And he probably had 8Hs and 88Hs. And at the time, a straight horn could get you by. It would be, not the best. And I think he just played these horns side by side a lot. And he went, you know what, the 88, you get a valve, so you get to play lower more easily. And it's just a better instrument. Why would I have my students use this straight 8H that's actually just worse than the 88 in almost every way, except it's, I guess, heavier or something, the 88Hs. So it's all about finding that balance, and I think the 8H is a not balanced instrument. One of the big examples of this that I got recently was I played next to a guy who had an Edwards T396, which is the Joe Alessi tenor trombone made by Edwards. I was playing a Bach 42 AFG. This is not that, but it was in another video. And that worked pretty well with my mouthpiece. Like, I had no complaints, really. It's pretty good balance. I could just kind of play straight through it. It's a stock box slide, so a little bit smaller mouthpiece or lead pipe. And it just balanced pretty well. And I was playing that, I was pretty happy, and I was like, you know what? I've never played the Alessi tenor. Can I try yours? And we swapped for a second. And I put in my Greg Black New York 1.25. Talked about this a lot. This is an Alessi mouthpiece, quote unquote. I put it in, and I was like, oh my God. This is perfect. Everything about it just lined up perfectly. The low range was killer. The high range was perfect. Everything just slotted perfectly. Everything was in tune. Flexibility was super easy. I could play super loud and super soft. And it was like, oh, that's how Joe Alessi has gotten his balance. That's where he put everything together to be in perfect balance. And the way Joe Alessi plays, which is probably with a lot of resistance at his face because he has really good chops. And then he has like a long silver lead pipe, sterling silver lead pipe, and just like a slightly smaller valve than a Thayer. It's a Rotex, and then the bracing and stuff. All puts together to be this amazing instrument with the right mouthpiece. The guy next to me was playing with a 5G, and he sounded great. He liked the horn a lot, but he was saying like, yeah, I think it's too open. It doesn't really work, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's because the 5G is so much smaller than something Joe Alessi would use that it just slightly puts it out of balance. It puts the resistance at the mouthpiece and not where it should be in the instrument. So that was another clue. Another clue is playing this mouthpiece, which is rather large, just talked about it, in an 88H. Doesn't really work either, because I just played a good Elkhart 88H and another Abilene, which is slightly later, 88H with this mouthpiece, and I can make it happen, but the horn really stops responding at a certain dynamic, a high dynamic. It's hard to play soft. The high range almost disappears. It's really hard to play high. The low range backs up on you because the throat of this is so large. It's not at all what a mouthpiece really suited for that is like. The Remington mouthpiece is pretty small. It's like a 6.5 AL, maybe with even a little bit smaller throat. And when you put those in and play an 88H, you go, oh, this feels really good. This resistance point is at just the right place. Is it the mouthpiece and maybe like the valve or something? And it works really, really well. So I know I've just kind of rambled on for a while about resistance and balance points and all these stupid things, but just keep this in mind when you're looking at a horn and you have like a certain kind of mouthpiece and you put it in and you don't like it. It might be you, it might be the mouthpiece, it might be the slide, it might be the lead pipe, it might be a lot of things. The horn really has to have that balance or it's just not going to work. See you guys next time.